I want to talk about the Rosefield and the Book of Dust trilogy by Philip Pullman. I've recently finished the Rosefield, which is the new instalment in the Book of Dust trilogy by Philip Pullman. His Dark Materials is one of my favourite series of all time. This trilogy is a sequel to that trilogy, and I was very excited for this series when it first got announced. When I think of series that define my childhood, I think of His Dark Materials. It's a series that's so full of wonder and magic and intrigue and excitement. It's a series I have a huge amount of nostalgia for, and it's one that I've returned to a lot over the years. So I was very excited when a new trilogy set in the same world and by the same author was going to be coming out. The first book, La Belle Sauvage, was released in 2017. This is 17 years after The Amber Spyglass, the final instalment in His Dark Materials. It follows a young boy called Malcolm who is tasked with taking a baby called Lyra to Jordan College in Oxford. It does have a very similar vibe to His Dark Materials. It's fantastical, it's magical, but it does feel discernibly more adult. The Secret Commonwealth is the second instalment in the Book of Dust. This came out 2 years after the first. This came out in 2019, and it now follows Lyra as an adult. That's right, confusingly, this book is a sequel to His Dark Materials. The first entry in this trilogy was a prequel to His Dark Materials. Lyra witnesses a murder in Oxford, and as a result of that is forced on this huge adventure to find a secret hidden in the desert, hundreds of miles away. And The Rosefield, the book I mainly want to talk about today, is the culmination of not just this trilogy, but His Dark Materials as well. This is the third book in the Book of Dust. It starts seconds after the Secret Commonwealth has ended, and is the culmination of Lyra's journey to find the secret in the desert, the titular Rosefield. I am not one of those people who believes that a more recent entry in a series retroactively ruins previous entries in this series. I still love His Dark Materials, but it gives me no great pleasure to say that unfortunately this book and the Book of Dust in general as a trilogy did not work for me. Firstly, I don't believe it works as a trilogy. It's neither a prequel nor a sequel to His Dark Materials because it's both. There are 3 books in between these two and a handful of novellas you have to read to make this series make any sort of sense. And there are themes and characters that run all the way through these 3 books to give them some form of cohesion, but that doesn't change the fact that the Secret Commonwealth and the Rosefield feel very connected and don't feel that connected to La Belle Sauvage. What I love so much about His Dark Materials as a series is how joyfully, wonderfully hopeful it feels, whilst also still being very existential. And I do think that's because the protagonists in His Dark Materials, both Will and Lyra, are both children in that series. They are incredibly hopeful, sometimes naively so, but it does make the series as a whole feel more joyful. That hopefulness is there in La Belle Sauvage because Malcolm, the protagonist of that book, is around the same age as Lyra is in His Dark Materials. But both the Secret Commonwealth and the Rosefield feel very dour and very bleak in a way that His Dark Materials doesn't feel. I do think this is intentional. I do think Pullman has done this on purpose to make this series feel more adult and more mature, but I still think it does the series as a whole a disservice. It also makes the Book of Dust feel almost completely disconnected from His Dark Materials. They very often don't feel like they're taking place in the same world. And by that I mean I feel like they don't take place in the same fictional world, because obviously there is a lot of world hopping in this series. Maybe it's because Pullman is aiming for more of an adult feel with this series, but the pacing feels so much more meandering. The books in His Dark Materials feel so full of excitement and propulsion. We are constantly on the move. And whilst that is the case with The Secret Commonwealth and The Rosefield, I didn't feel that same sense of excitement. As you can tell from their size, these are very big books, and I don't really feel like they have any sense of urgency. They do feel very meandering. I do think they've both fallen prey to something that happens to a lot of fantasy books, in that the ending is the thing that always suffers in the edit. The endings to both of these books, but specifically The Rosefield, feel very rushed. They don't feel like they give the reader enough time to settle into what Pullman is trying to say with this series. And I do think the ending is where the Rosefield suffers the most. Going to issue a major spoiler warning here in that I'm going to talk about the ending of the Rosefield, a book that has only just come out. So if you do want to experience it for yourself, please skip ahead. Around halfway through the Rosefield, Lyra has a conversation with an angel where she comes to the realization that actually leaving the doors open between worlds is actually okay. And at the end of the Rosefield, she leaves one of these doors open. And to me, that makes the emotional end of the Amber Spyglass, where Will and Lyra had to say goodbye to each other and remain in their own worlds and never see each other again, completely null and void. Couple that with the fact that Lyra has spent 2 very long books travelling to this destination, this Rosefield, this red building in the middle of the desert, and it turns out to be something completely strange and baffling. We've spent over 1,000 pages with Lyra as she journeys to this red building in this desert, this Rosefield, and when she gets there, she finds a door to another world. And in this world, there's a lot of construction going on, there's a lot of building, and people are really neglecting their demons. A lot of demons are ill or sick. And you get the sense that Pullman is trying to say that people aren't connected to themselves or their souls anymore, they're connected to progress and money. But it all just feels very heavy-handed in a way that his Dark Materials wasn't. Because ultimately this book has been about Lyra's self-discovery, about her trying to connect back to that wonderful child she was before. But because this book is so dour, and because we are spread so thin across so many different characters and locations, it never really feels like it earns that. And unfortunately, none of the conclusions feel satisfying. We don't know what Lyra is going to do next. We don't know what Malcolm is going to do next, where they're going from here. And also our big bad, the big bad of this whole series, Marcel de la Mare, Lyra's uncle, is unceremoniously killed 20 pages before the end. I didn't even realise it had happened until it was referenced in another paragraph. I completely missed that it had happened. It feels like this series just became too big for Pullman to manage, and that's maybe why this final instalment took so long. But it's just incredibly sad that this is where it's all led. I think my main wish for this book and this series was that Pullman had just whittled down that character list. We spend our time with so many different people, most of whom I couldn't even name to you right now. I wish we had spent more time just following Lyra, not even Malcolm. I don't really know why he was part of books 2 and 3. He doesn't feel relevant. I wish Pullman had spent more time trying to unpack his central ideas for this series, because that is where I feel like this series completely falls short. Because in many ways it does feel like he set himself up to fail, because his previous trilogy was both an exciting adventure and a really, really good unpacking of all of the ideas that he wanted to unpack. I think there are some really, really great ideas in this trilogy, and I think Pullman is a really good storyteller. I think this beast just became far too unwieldy for him. I, like many fans of his Dark Materials, would have loved a continuation of Lyra's story. I don't hate these books. I think I may revisit them in a few years' time and see how I feel about this series. I just wish we'd gotten something more succinct. I wish we'd have maybe got another little novella like he's written in the past for this series, or one book. Unfortunately, as it stands, The Book of Dust feels like a big series of missed opportunities.